regarding the Hunter Biden laptop. This is back in the news. I mean, there's a big deal, obviously, with the Hunter Biden laptop, but there's also a bigger deal that we were all told for a very long time that this laptop never existed, that this was Russian disinformation. And if you even so much as to mention it on social media during the election, by the way, you were removed, you were deplatformed, you were censored. This was all fake. This was not real. It was all smoke, no fire. But all of a sudden, turns out now it's real. Turns out people want to talk about it. Turns out the mainstream media wants to talk about it. And there was a bombshell the other day with Mark Zuckerberg on the Joe Rogan podcast talking about how, well, we were worried because the FBI was worried. And so because the FBI was worried, we were just going to do something a little bit different than Twitter. And we were just going to censor anybody and everybody that kind of talked about it on Facebook. During the election, do you think maybe some people might have wanted to know what was going on with Biden? What was going on with Hunter Biden as well? His business dealings, the things that were on that laptop. You think that might have had a little bit of an impact on the election? That's what the polls and the data say. A lot of people would have switched and would have changed their vote based on the information that they know now, of which the big tech, the social media companies suppressed. I just love how now all of a sudden the election's over. Now we could talk about all this. Now we're okay to talk about it and not worried about being censored for the most part. Well, Republican senators are demanding that Facebook turn over its communications with the FBI regarding Hunter Biden's laptop. Quote, the American people deserve to know whether the FBI used Facebook as part of their alleged plan to discredit information about Hunter Biden. If that is true, this is coming from Chuck Grassley and Ron Johnson of Wyoming, I believe. If this is true, this is a massive infiltration of the FBI. And now we're seeing a consecutive term or years going forward here of which the FBI has done some shady things against not just Trump, but also against the Republicans and conservatives. And not just the FBI, but again, under the Obama administration, you had the IRS targeting conservatives, name brand conservatives, and denying it. And it turns out it was real. In the same way, everybody on the Democrat side of the aisle was denying the Hunter Biden laptop existed. Turns out that was real as well. So we're seeing consistencies here in things saying that they're fake and all of a sudden they're real and that we're conspiracy theorists. Turns out we're all legit. Facebook did not immediately respond to requests for comment from the Daily Wire. Mark Zuckerberg's admission to the podcast host Joe Rogan that Facebook decreased distribution of the Hunter Biden laptop story ahead of the 2020 election at the bidding of the FBI. And obviously that has sparked massive backlash. I mean, that was, at the time, just kind of listening to it, it doesn't seem like a big thing. It just looks like two guys having a conversation. But within that was such a mind-blowing statement. It was literally head-spinning and just sparked massive backlash here. Quote, the FBI routinely notifies U.S. private sector entities, including social media providers, of potential threat information, so that they can decide how to better defend against threats. The FBI said in a statement Friday night, adding that it cannot ask or direct companies to take action on information received. The lawmakers specifically requested all records between and among Facebook, the FBI, and the DOJ, as well as government agency employees that refer to Hunter Biden, including but not limited to Russian disinformation, the Hunter Biden laptop, and senators' investigation into Hunter Biden's business dealings. They also asked for the names of the DOJ, FBI, Facebook officials who communicated regarding Russian disinformation during the 2020 election, as well as those officials who made contact during the 2020 election, and the dates of when Facebook decreased the distribution of the articles relating to Hunter Biden's laptop, which again would probably show, depending on the dates and times, a massive sway in the election and the integrity of the election as well. I mean, folks, let's be real here. The more information that comes out, the more and more we're all inclined to believe that there was some fishy stuff going on. We don't have the evidence to prove that, the election would sway one way or the other, but there definitely was fishy stuff going on, and there was definitely fraud going on as well. I mean, that part's actually verifiable. That part's legit. You can actually see on the records dead people voting. You can also see people that were voting from places that literally don't exist, from addresses that don't exist. And that's not something you have to wait for the government to do that. I mean, you could literally actually do that yourself by looking up the registry and just driving to the location. There's nobody there. So we know that stuff happened. You had a great job from Dinesh D'Souza doing 2,000 Mules, talking about election integrity and kind of the shadiness that was going on. And now you have big tech in bed with the Democrats probably doing more shady stuff on suppressing information. Quote, your revelation that Facebook took steps to censor information about Hunter Biden on its platform based on the FBI's guidance raises even more questions about the FBI's actions regarding Hunter Biden's laptop, the letter said. As you may know, the senators continued, whistleblowers have recently alleged that Senator Grassley, that in August 2020, FBI officials initiated a scheme to downplay derogatory information on Hunter Biden for the purpose of shutting down investigative activity relating to his potential criminal exposure by labeling it disinformation. That's negligence. You are knowingly doing something, trying to suppress certain information to get an outcome of which you desire. I mean, that's infiltration of the FBI that's supposed to not be political or biased. And now they're going with the side of a specific party here. That should worry all of you. Once the FBI, that's used as a club, very similar to the IRS, becomes corrupt, you basically have a fall of our institutions here in America. Whistleblowers have also alleged to Senator Johnson that local FBI leadership instructed its employees not to look at the Hunter Biden laptop immediately after the FBI had obtained it. But if this was Trump, if the shoe was on the other foot, they would have lost their minds. The media would have lost their minds. Democrats would have lost their minds. The progressive left would have lost their minds. People would have gone in the streets. Folks, literally Trump was investigated, and I believe he was impeached under the same thing, for basically having a phone call with Zelensky. Was it Zelensky? He had a phone call. And they were freaking out over the transcript and everything like that. I mean, they were literally freaking out as well and wanted to put in the 25th Amendment because his hand was shaking when he was having a glass of water. We've seen Joe Biden fall off his bike. We've seen Joe Biden hit a golf ball backwards. We've seen Joe Biden slur his words constantly. He doesn't know the names of his staff. He doesn't know his wife's name. He gets chauffeured around by the Easter Bunny and his wife and Secret Service and doesn't follow orders. He fights with his teleprompter. He forgets that he says something. So then when he's at the G7 summit, Boris Johnson and everybody else laugh at him at the G7 summit because he loses his train of thought. None of that's investigated. There's no cognitive test here. But again, Trump just gets treated vastly different, not just by the Democrats, but by the DOJ, the FBI, the IRS, and others. He was just raided for having documents. I'm all on board with, hey, he needs to give the documents back. If he didn't declassify it, those are National Archives, whatever. But he was complying. But they raided him. But here, you actually had leaked information from the Hunter Biden laptop. You have video recordings, footage, photos of their faces, the people involved. You have the sound bites of them. You have voicemails of Joe Biden himself. You have emails of Joe Biden himself. Nothing. Nothing at all. No raids, nothing. And we're going on years now at this point. Nothing. It's corrupt, folks. It's really corrupt. There's a lot of stuff going on. You also just had the probe of the FBI that was involved in all of this, especially the Mar-a-Lago stuff as well. There's a lot of stuff that's coming out, folks, getting exposed. But ultimately, he ended up resigning. Supposedly, he got the boot as well. And it seems like they softened the blow with him to allow him to resign. And I think if you resign, somebody correct me, I think if you resign yourself, you still get a pension because he was in there for like 25 years as FBI probe. I'm going to hold off on going over that story because I want more information to come out. The FBI is getting really tight-lipped on this because it seems like they're having a massive turnover of what's going on here. Basically, this Mar-a-Lago raid, what's going on with now the Hunter Biden laptop is kind of shaking things up in that institution, as it should be. I mean, ever since we've been dealing with James Comey, folks, things have been going irate there in the FBI. That's not to bash FBI as a whole. There's a lot of good people, a lot of good agents that do good work. But there's also some, like Peter Strzok and others that we saw the text messages under the Trump administration that are in some fishy business here, acting biased and going after a specific party, meaning the Republicans. I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Bald Brad Show. If you did, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all our future content.